Okay, I'm fiddling with things. Not sure if we're live, but now I believe we're live. And I just need to get my house in order. And I think I'm going to start things off by sneeze. I am going to sneeze. I don't know what brought that on. But yes, okay, so I didn't put out the advance warning that I was doing the live stream, so it might take a little while for folks to come in. Hi, Luke. Nice to see you. Yeah, if I get myself organized more quickly, I can put a thing to send out a notification an hour before I go live, which seems to help with people organizing themselves to come in. Hey, hello, CrossFitter, how are you going? Cheers. That's an experimental drink. I might have put too much lime in it. It's not bad. It's a little bit tart from the lime from what we were talking about on Tuesday night. I put the lime into coconut. Hello, Gemma. How are you? Just getting everything set up, and I might seeing I have a few followers on Facebook now. I might I might get a little note in my Facebook group and say, I'm live, you should come and join, because it's fun when we do live stuff. Luke, is that the line? Shake it all about? Put the lime in the coconut and shake it all up. Yeah. So, and this is just mixed in the glass. I will maybe try it as a cocktail tomorrow night, a bit more refined, and that will be shake it all up. Gemma, what about Oscar? Who's Oscar? What's happened to Oscar? Is Oscar safe? Who is Oscar first, I guess? Are we talking about Oscar the Grouch or some other Oscar? Man, this laptop just really wants to take a long time to load stuff. Come and join me live for lots of fun. Oh, this is like so slow. Okay, give it a minute to. It's going slower than bloody my typing. Hey, Miss Foxification, Gemma, Pasco Vale. Sorry, I'm still lost. Oscar and Pasco Vale. I apologize for being slow on the uptake, but it does seem that I'm slow on uptake. Luke, I saw you posting stuff about that. The state government is not supporting the overland train, which, am I right in saying a lot of people are disappointed, upset, something like that? South Australian government not winning fans? Oh, now I just have to, yeah, speaking of Facebook, check if this fucking Jordan Peterson groupie is fucked off. Honestly, it's like, you know, if you want to be into Jordan Peterson, be into Jordan Peterson. But don't say dumb shit like, Jordan Peterson's not misogynist. Jordan Peterson doesn't preach selfishness. It's like, fuck off. Okay? I don't know. Oh, I guess you have to lie to yourself and pretend you're not a piece of shit. But don't waste my time with ridiculous fucking denials like that. It's absolutely pathetic. But then again, if you're going to be sucked in by someone as I mean, honestly, Jordan Peterson is such a blatant scam artist. You know, it's just absolute sort of faux intellectualism, just like he's using big words. Look, in terms of psychology, which is his area of expertise, and the areas of history he's studied, he's quite insightful. It's just then he extrapolates. I mean, honestly, you just have to listen to some of the drivel he goes on with about chaos and order and the mystical. And my personal favorite is so many of his fanboys are part of the sort of new atheist movement, and Peterson has such a weird fixation on religion. He says there's no such thing as an atheist with morals. If you have any sort of moral standards at all, in his world, that means by definition you're not an atheist, which is just ridiculous. But anyway, and hello, Jason and Belinda. Jason rubbing the nipples. Jason just does that in anticipation of lots of things. But yes. Ms. Foxification, you reckon you've never heard them just come out and admit they're racist? You want someone like, well, again, they tend to even deny it a bit publicly, but someone like who joins a group of fuckers like the Proud Boys, but you get the actual neo-Nazis, the ones who put the 1488 in the slogan, who paste up those bizarre, outdated anti-Semitic things. And it's like, I think once you get into the swastikas and the Jews control the world thing, I think those ones will admit to it. But it's the double standard is so. And who do they think they're fooling? This is the thing that always does my head in. As like promoting this misogynist, bigoted, racist, homophobic bullshit, and then just saying, "Oh, but I'm not bigoted at all." It's like, oh, okay. Hello, Charlie. How are you? That is an elegant way to put it, Miss Foxification. Peterson is an intellectual dilettante marketing himself for money. The thing is, he's so disingenuous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, there was that famous, I think it was a BBC interview with a female interviewer, and she kept interrupting him and saying things like, "Oh, so you're saying that, women are useless?" And that's absolutely the wrong tactic to use with him, because it makes him look like a martyr. And you don't tell him, "So you're saying." You leave it open-ended. Go, what point are you trying to make there? Because he doesn't make points. He says this vapid stuff, and there's all this really obvious subtext of men should be in control, women should do what they're told. But he won't come out and say it. But if you just keep stringing him, just go, and in practical terms, what does that mean? In practical terms, how would that work? And he's got nowhere to go because he's just talking shit. Hey, Lion Spider, how's it going? And Musical Aviator, if I haven't said hello as well. Making a card for your friend who will be in Hamburg this time next week. Oh, lucky them. At least I hope it's lucky them. I hope it's for a good reason. I mean, honestly, I saw Jordan Peterson get totally undone by the comedian Jim Jeffries, the Australian-born comedian, although he's a US citizen now, I believe. He did an interview with Jordan Peterson because he has a weekly show on HBO or something like that. And he had Jordan Peterson on, and he's not attacking Jordan Peterson. He's letting go. And Jim Jeffries bring up, like, for instance, the bakers who said they were going to refuse to bake a wedding cake for a gay couple. And Jim Jeffries says, should they have been made to make the cake? And Peterson says, no, they shouldn't be forced to. Forcing is wrong. He said what they're doing is awful. What they're doing is terrible and I don't agree with it. But trying to force them by law to do it is wrong. People should change willingly. Coerced change of behavior is bad and doesn't work. And then Jim Jeffries just brought up desegregation, which was forced on people who definitely didn't want it. He's going, but we had to force desegregation. Are you saying desegregation is bad? Are you saying it would be better if people were still allowed to do racial segregation? And Peterson just stopped dead, and it's just like really simply backed into a corner. He's like, either you have to take back what you said and say, well, there are cases where you should coerce people to behave like decent fucking humans, or you have to sit there and go, I think segregation is an excusable thing. And you see Peterson pause for a moment. To his credit, he just went, you know what, you make a good point. There are times when actually coercing people to change their behavior is an acceptable thing. He didn't do the politician thing. You know how politicians would have waffled and gone back and forth and not actually said anything? You just saw him stop dead and turned it over in his head for a second or two. And it's like he's realized, either I take back what I said and say I was wrong, or I basically say segregation's cool. And like I said, to his credit, he took it back. He said, you know what? You made a good point. And I was thinking, it's a fucking comedian. Why do supposed journalists have problems actually just taking the simple steps to expose the ridiculousness of what Peterson says? And a comedian just gets him like that. Now, admittedly, as probably Jim Jeffries' writing staff who planned that, it's probably a whole bunch of people got together and planned it. But it was like, it was such a simple way to go, no, stop. You're just saying words and your words are stupid. And I'm going to stop you, point out why your words are stupid. And what do you say to that? And there's the thing, Jim Jeffries did say, so are you saying segregation's good? He just said, well, you know, we coerced, we had to get rid of segregation by law. Was that the right thing to do? And he's just gone, yeah, that was the right thing to do. But I mean, I've seen a couple of interviews with Jordan Peterson. You just let him talk. Don't cut him off. Don't try and be smarter than him. Don't try and one-up him. You just let him talk. And you just say, explain that to me. How would that work? And the big thing with these people, Peterson and his followers, who just want to make a big scene, they're going to make their big rhetorical flourishes, and they sort of refuse to commit to anything. Just keep leading them on. And yes, as you say, misfalsification, give him enough rope and he'll hang himself. Because it's actually when you cut them off that they get away with what they're saying. Just say, no, dude, keep talking. What's the saying as Platonic irony? Is it Plato's way of arguing? Is Plato or Socrates? Socratic irony? It's Socratic irony. Is where you basically, when someone's arguing with you, rather than really argue the point, if you think their argument is completely nonsensical and standard tactical debating won't work with them because they won't concede anything, the Socratic irony in arguing is you just act like you're really dumb and don't understand anything. So when they say blah, 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 and you go, well, how does that work? And then they have to say more. And you go, what does that mean? And they have to say, like, you give them less and less room to hide. Like, rather than them using their weasel words and hiding behind not saying anything, just every time you just say, well, explain that. Help me understand that. How would that work? And if they're position is truly nonsensical or just vile and wrong. They can only hide it for a limited amount of time, and it's actually quite effective. What am I drinking, Belinda? The lime in the coconut, which I probably put a bit too much lime in. I got this stuff from a shop that does cocktail supplies called Only Bitters. They get a lot of flavored bitters from them. This is a lime cordial. They call it a very friendly and cordial lime. And so all that's in it is water, cane sugar, concentrated clarified lime juice, touch of lime peel, and gomme arabica. This is basically for cocktails. Yes, facts over feels. As we were talking about on Tuesday night, I should put the lime into coconut drink, and there's possibly some Captain Morgan spiced rum in there as well. Ooh, Belinda, a radler with lemon. I don't even know what a radler is. Charlie, that's a perfect example. Dude tells a really sexist or racist joke. Instead of berating them for it, I think you just go, I don't get it. What's the funny part there? And then you either make them look really stupid, or you force them to just blatantly say something really sexist or racist, and just go like, how is that funny? Yeah. Oh, Belinda, Radler is a beer. There you go. That's why I don't know it. Because I'm not a beer drinker. Luke, you like urine. Yeah, if this is what your urine sample looks like, you should consult a doctor. Not good. Not good at all. You'd be very dehydrated if your urine's this color, and maybe quite sick. Adele, you're not late at all. I've only been going about 15 minutes. So you're practically on time. Very early days in this here stream. Yes, line spider, if there is also ice in your urine, that is a truly unique medical problem you have going on there. And I think probably some universities would want to study you. That would be, quite the thing. I'll blend it. Radler's German for cyclist. Okay. So you notice this stuff, although it's lime cordial, it's very brown. It's not artificially green like you get Cotty's cooler lime is bright green. Even like Bickford's lime is not that colored. It's very pale yellow green. This is actually quite concentrated to be used in cocktails, and so they haven't worried about the color. It's actually quite brown. Yes. Musically evaded. You think if you're urinating ice, the doctor you see will be the one with the blue box? Yes, possibly. Yes, Adele, that's what you're saying. I'm not surprised you haven't seen an ambulance case card with someone urinating ice, because that would be a truly unique set of circumstances. Do you think? I wonder if anyone's used to make a fake urine test. Oh my God, one of my favorite movies from the 80s called Withnell and I. And the lead character, Withnell, is a hopeless alcoholic played by Richard E. Grant, and he has such misadventures. Hello, Wrestle with Deep Thought and Tendai. And one of Withnell's misadventures is he thinks he's got this bottle of child's urine. He's strapping it to his leg so he can drive drunk, and if the cops pull him over, like refuses any sort of sobriety test, but a urine test, and you're going to got a little valve on his bottle of child's urine, and he uses that and he'll come up clean, which is a ridiculous solution only an alcoholic would come up with, because you're fairly obviously drunk at that stage, and when the time comes, he's unable to operate the mechanism correctly, and it goes everywhere. But it's a great movie, one of my all-time favorites, Withnell and I. And it's the lead characters. Withnall is Richard E. Grant, and the I in question is Paul McGann. You know, the guy who played the Doctor for that one-off TV movie in the 90s. Was that Russell? How big is Batista's dick? That I'm not sure of, but Batista is a very interesting character, certainly. Luke, you have Dumb and Dumber with a cop drinking what he thinks is wine. This is where I admit to one of my youthful misadventures. I actually went and saw Dumb and Dumber in the cinema on acid. Yeah, that was an experience. The scene in Dumb and Dumber where Jim Carrey doses Jeff Daniels with laxatives, and there's that one scene of his uncontrollable shitting, and it's just constant fart noises for a couple of minutes, and I literally fell out of my chair laughing. I was just lying down on the floor laughing. That really got to me. Yes. Yeah, stressful with deep thought. You want to hear the most annoying noise ever. Adele, acid's a bad idea if it's not in controlled environments. Like, I've run into people who were isolated and by themselves having a trip and getting spaced out. That's a really bad idea. You really don't want to do that. Belinda. In Seinfeld, Elaine used someone else's urine and the doctor said you have menopause. That's the old joke about guys using a woman's urine for a urine test and being told they're pregnant. It's like, yes, if you're going to use someone else's urine for a urine test, you want them to be the same gender as you and the same age, or you'll get the risk of very weird results. Or just don't do the thing where you have to do false urine tests. So, because these days it is actually quite difficult to do successfully fool a urine test. These days there virtually has to be collusion between you and whoever's performing the test to get away with it. I mean, we're going to bring up old Seinfeld episodes. Russell, there's an episode where John Lovitz pretends to have cancer. Oh my God, I just saw the clip. I think it's from the latest season of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where they're remembering a funny incident from their life. And in the memory, they're actually acting out a scene from Seinfeld. And only one of them goes, that's not a memory. You know, I remember that. You're remembering an episode of Seinfeld. But the bit where they're each playing a character is just hilarious. And because the numbers don't match, two of them are playing Jerry, and Danny DeVito's playing George. And yeah, I just saw it on YouTube. It's like a 2-minute clip, and it was pretty goddamn funny just seeing them. And because they did the Seinfeld imitation so well. It was really spectacular piece of work. But yeah, that was pretty good. This is all I do on YouTube. I hardly watch any like YouTuber videos anymore. If I'm on YouTube, I'm usually watching music videos or clips from shows or movie trailers. I'm a bad YouTuber. I don't watch other YouTubers. I do. Not as much as I used to. Like probably when I was at peak involvement in YouTube, which was like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd watch something like 2 hours of YouTube videos a day. And that would all be, you know, independent YouTube content creators. So, yeah, things have changed. Agro Pixie's here. All right. Yes, Belinda. It's you're right. You think of Campbell Newman, you think of Jerry Seinfeld saying Newman, but there's some of those things that seep into your mind. It's and that's one of them. If you ever meet someone called Newman, it's really hard to not to go Newman. But yeah, there's probably a few things like that, and it probably depends what shows you watched. Like if you do a reference that other people don't get, that's always awkward. So Tendo, you think I'm not a bad YouTuber, not interested in YouTuber shenanigans? Yeah, but every now and then I feel guilty for not being a more active supporter of other YouTubers. I should really do it because I used to be full on. I should definitely do it more. But you know, I guess it comes down to the frame of mind you're in on a given day. And I mean, seriously, for a couple of years, I've been, I don't know, trying to change my headspace on YouTube, and I don't think I've really succeeded. Oh God, there's cats fighting somewhere outside. Just hear cats fighting. So I Spider, you worked with your Indian fellow named Apu. He must have loved that. Yeah, that's gonna get to you really if you're Indian and your name's Apu. Wait a sec. No, I'm just getting rid of really, really, really fucking sad Jordan Peterson fan. She's like, people say, why do you block people? Well, honestly, usually because they're boring. And it's just like, I have no time at all for people who are just fucking boring. And it's just like, no, dude, you just crossed the threshold of rank fucking stupidity. And I'm not wasting any more time on you. There's another thing, like, I get an endless barrage of these dickheads like, you have to engage me. You have to do this. I go, dude, I don't have to do anything. What I choose to do is preserve my sanity. And it's what you feel about, you know, your free speech, your rights, is totally fucking irrelevant. At the point you get boring and waste my time, that's it. It's block delete city because you're garbage and just not worth it. And the double benefit is helping my mental health, and the second benefit is it tends to upset them enormously. They think they've been slighted somehow. The number of times over the years I've had people have hissy fits, sometimes directly asserting that I've broken a law, and you've broken free speech laws. And it's going, dude, you are such a fucking loser. My God. Belinda, where's Mimsy? I think I just heard her fighting, actually. She might come in later. I don't know exactly where she is at the moment. Last I saw her, she was sunning herself on some concrete, absorbing the day's heat out of the concrete. She loves that. She loves pure yells from behind the mountain. Okay. Oh, Charlie, I'm sure Mimsy's okay. In fact, the one who's usually in the fighting is Shadow, who's smaller and more useless. And there's this neighbor cat it keeps getting in altercations with. Never seems to get seriously. Oh my God, our last house, our neighbor had this big aggressive male cat, mostly white, but it was just like this really muscular cat. Like, it was a really beautiful cat. If it wasn't a piece of shit who kept attacking cats, and I mean, you know, I'd find cats with their snout bleeding where he'd attack them. If he wasn't such a piece of shit, would have really liked this cat, but he was an aggressive piece of shit. And hello, nobody. Nice to see you. Tendai was an absolute unit. No, I think you'd have to be a bit rounder as a cat for me to call you an absolute unit. But it was this very lean, muscular cat, and it was bigger than mine. Both of ours are female, and Shadow in particular is a bit of a runt, an undersized cat. She's like only 2/3 the size of Mimsy. She's just a bit of a runt. Yes, I know that quote by Stephen Fry, Miss Foxification. It's common to hear people say, I'm offended by that, like it gives them rights. It's that whole argument is slightly fraught, in my opinion. Like, obviously, I offend people all the time. And some people with that sort of, oh, you don't have a right to be offended, they use that as a defense when they're spouting full-on hate speech, where they're vilifying groups of people and asserting that something terrible needs to be done to that group of people, and they do this sort of, oh, you don't have the right to be offended, as opposed to someone who just hears something they don't like and wants to shut down. Because clearly I offend people all the time. But yes, I think on either end of the spectrum, someone who tries to argue an extreme black and white position is not something I'm going to use a bit of time on. Is that Lance? What am I drinking? We're calling the lime and the coconut. Well, some lemonade and some spiced rum and lime cordial and coconut juice. So put the lime in the coconut and drink it all up. It's funny, you get offended if someone serves you a cup of international roast. I can see that. The other side of that, oh, you know, people are too easily offended, is really lazy comedians or just public figures, people speaking publicly, who casually say cruel, thoughtless, hurtful things and expect to suffer no repercussions for it. It's like, well, you know, if you're an asshole, I'm going to call you out. And then it's up to you to defend your position. And if your defense is, oh, you're so easily offended, you're probably a piece of shit. If someone's upset by something I said, I'm going to either explain my position or listen to the person and go, if I feel the person's making a point, I'll go, okay, I hadn't seen things from your point of view. I'll now consider things from your point of view. But if I think someone's talking shit, I'm going to tell them I'm talking shit and I'm going to stick by what I say. I'm not going to do some vapid, oh, you're so easily offended bullshit. It's like, you either stand behind what you said, defend what you said, or fucking take it back. Don't blame the people you've offended if you don't even have the integrity to stick by what you say. Oh God, Tendo, you're getting obscure there. Seinfeld and his shitty gay French king go. I don't even know. I mean, Seinfeld, like, God, everyone in the 90s told lots of terrible jokes, but God, Seinfeld today has, a lot of people hate it, but I kind of like that series he had of comedians in cars getting coffee, not for him, but for the people he interviews. And that's what he would say too. He would say, you shouldn't watch the show for me. You should watch it for the people I'm interviewing. And some of them are quite good, but he is quite regularly, he says shit, and he's so clearly out of touch, like doing lame crap like, I'm not going to go on university campuses because they're too easily offended. And it's like, well, dude, it's a bit more like you're not going on university campuses because no one that age finds you funny, and you can't actually stand by the shit you say when someone goes, well, that was gratuitous and shit and not funny. Hi, Stella, how are you? You know, there are a lot of comedians who do what I call very edgy stuff and stuff that offends a lot of people and whatnot. But, you know, they defend their position and they go for it. I mean, it's interesting because, you know, Netflix has so much comedy on it, so much stand-up and live specials and whatnot. There's something for everyone in there. I'm surprised at how much I just don't find funny. Some of them I find really funny. This Foxification, I agree there are some people who take things a little bit far, but I'll make 2 points on that. The people who stake out the really extreme positions are a tiny, tiny minority. And most commonly, the people who draw attention to it are people with an axe to grind. Like, they really overstate how often it happens, how much impact it has, how many people those people voicing those rather extreme opinions actually represent. But oh yeah, you don't have to go far to find someone, and I don't mean like a conservative who says they're offended by someone. I'm someone who I would call taking the political correctness thing too far, and they're very upset, you know, because I swear, for instance, and it's just like, well, you know, I can deal with it or not. I don't care. Oh God, Stella, you were doing the dishes, but now there's a spider drowning in your sink. I'm glad to provide a distraction. And hi, mofo, sign. Make sure comedians are trained properly. You know what? That's what AngryAussie did for a few years. Trained young comedians, because he worked in stand-up for ages. Then he got too sick to, because actually touring and doing a lot of stand-up's really punishing, and he wasn't physically well enough to do it. So he trained young comedians. Look, I don't think I even know Isaac Butterfield. Mitchell, free speech is free speech. Look, this is where we get the fun thing. You're talking about free speech. The overwhelming majority of people I butt heads with online who pull out the free speech line are full of shit, and they actually don't know what the term means. In countries that have enshrined free speech protections in their laws, and the biggest obvious example is the US, free speech absolutely does not mean no restrictions on your speech and no repercussions for your speech. It definitely doesn't mean that. In the US, you can't slander someone, you can't incite people to violence or to insurrection against the government. And I think almost every state in the US has hate speech laws. So there are always constraints on speech. And these morons on the internet who blithely assert free speech is, I need to be allowed to say anything I want, anywhere I want, on any platform, and no one can take any action as a result of it. Because there is literally no legal jurisdiction in the world where free speech means that. And they get so angry when I say that. Like, you know, because I use the phrase free speech is a myth. And they lose their fucking minds and go, well, what you are declaring to be free speech literally does not exist as a legal concept anywhere in the world. Where countries have free speech doctrines or laws, what it broadly comes on is the government shouldn't prosecute you for things you say if the things you say aren't hurting someone. And that's where you get into definitions of, well, how do you define the exceptions? Like I say, broadly, the exceptions are you can't slander someone, you can't incite violence, and in almost every jurisdiction in the world, there's some form of hate speech law. But you get all grey areas around that. That's why you have courts. As you argue things in front of judges and they make things. Oh, Steady saying Isaac Butterfield is a right-wing version of me. Yes, you're saying he's disingenuous in his logic. I find that to be an almost universal truth. People pushing the right-wing view of the world and arguing that they're all about facts, not feelings and whatnot, they tend to be the most polite thing you can say about them is they are disingenuous. They tend to argue in bad faith. Hey, Deucey boy. Yo, you like that? Hitting the nail on it. Nailing it on the head. Hitting it on the nail. Heading the nail. All those things. Oh, geez, Lion Spider, is that it? That Isaac used to be funny before he mentioned, man, people who jump on the MRA stuff, they get so humorless so quickly. It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. But yeah. That's an interesting combo, Riz. You know, a guy who voted Greens first and LNP second. Hey, you know, the world is full of people who see things differently. And this is also what I laugh, like, whenever you get, again, it's fuckheads on the internet. You're going about, oh, conservative people are being silenced. They don't mean conservative. They mean extremely bigoted and obnoxious. It's never when they say, oh, you can't be a conservative. They don't mean, well, I'm going to calmly argue for the traditional conservative values of monetary policy and how far the government should be involved in trade and foreign diplomacy and that sort of thing. No, they want to argue that they can treat anyone they don't like shit. They want to argue that their bigotry is completely legitimate. Oh, Mitchell, how can we make everyone happy? Humans aren't like that, in my humble opinion. I'm reminded of the lines Agent Smith said in The Matrix about how the first version of The Matrix was a paradise and it failed terribly because humans couldn't accept the idea of a paradise. People need things to be wrong and to complain about stuff and whatnot. The simple fact is, how do you make everyone happy? No one's right all the time. You know, and shocking, I am going to admit, that would include me. And also, nobody can be trusted with power. It's one of the oldest sayings, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Basically, I don't think there's any doubt. If someone gets sort of untrammeled access to power and no one can stop them, no matter how good their intentions are when they went in, history shows us people slide into evil. If there aren't checks and balances, people slide into evil behavior. That's a funny one, Rez. We're saying Anthony Bourdain was buddies with Ted Nugent. I see Ted Nugent, someone who I think argues in bad faith. Again, like probably 5 minutes before the end, Frankie the Skin will pop in. And he is, I mean, he's a Thatcher-loving Tory from England, but we just get on because, you know, well, we're both opposed to bigotry and people being shitheads, and we're both in favour of speaking your mind. Now, on a lot of political things, there's a fundamental disagreement because he's a conservative, and I'm kind of loony left. But a bedrock for both of us is being against bigotry and wanting to be able to speak your mind. Safa, is compulsory voting a good thing? Yes, because when you don't have compulsory voting, you get people in power going out of their way to disenfranchise people that they think will vote against them. But if everyone has to vote, you can't do the sort of bullshit that's happening in the US. So I think compulsory voting is a net positive. You can argue all the things about, oh, you shouldn't force people, blah, blah, blah. No, just look at the results as far as I'm concerned. And our voting system is just orders of magnitude better than the US voting system. Yes, Great Pixie, you're right. Frank is also very staunchly pro-feminist. It's just he is the person who, when he's arguing for conservative values, he is literally talking about economic stuff and how laws are made and that sort of stuff. He favours the traditional Tory party stuff in England. He's not using it as a shield for being a hideous fucking bigot. It's like, as soon as you hear someone saying, oh, conservatives aren't allowed to say anything. Go, no, you are not talking about conservative politics. You are talking about bigotry and being a piece of shit, and you're trying to use as a shield. Oh, it's just my political opinion. You go, no, you're a horrible fucking person, and you need to be called to account for being a horrible fucking person. Saying it's just your opinions. But if your bullshit is about subjugating other people who haven't done anything wrong, about controlling the lives of others who aren't doing anything to hurt anyone, then that's bullshit. Safa, should bigotry be illegal? The extreme expressions of it are illegal. If you're doing stuff to the point of exerting violence against someone or actively inhibiting the rights of someone because of your bigotry, in most jurisdictions, you're breaking the law. It's like you don't need to have a law that says bigotry is illegal, because that's too hard to define. But all the actions that bigots take, whether it's outright violence or just discrimination and vilification, you have laws about that. People who do things to hurt people because of their bigotry, there are laws that make that behavior illegal. So couldn't be friends with a Trump supporter. Someone who said they actively, and the really stupid support, the stupid things you hear the ardent Trump supporters say, is like, no, as A, you're too fucking stupid for me to deal with. B, you are a horrible, horrible bigot, and I won't waste time on a bigot, no matter how they describe their motivations, no matter how they describe their politics. You get people who call themselves left-wing feminists who are horribly bigoted against some group. Sometimes it'll be racial bigotry. Sometimes it'll be homophobia. Sometimes it'll be transphobia. So there's not a particular political persuasion that's immune from bigotry and being obnoxious. Yeah, it's like there is a world of difference between someone being a John Howard supporter, even a George W. Bush supporter. And there's also a difference between someone who voted along party lines to vote for the Republican presidential candidate, Trump, and someone who describes themselves as an active Trump supporter, because that's a fucking disease as far as I'm concerned. You raise a good point, Musical Aviator. If you want to protest against compulsory voting, you don't have to write anything on the form. They can't make you. So the world will die before everyone goes on. Look, human nature. People find things to be in conflict about. Look, history just shows us again and again, there will always be people who go after power and don't care who they hurt. I mean, all through history, you know, the slaughters that have happened everywhere, you know, basically it seems like part of the human condition. I guess we could just try and do our best in the meantime. Yes, Russell, I agree with you. Europe does look scary with so many far right groups rising, but it's yeah, it is strange and troubling times we live in, and I don't know how long this is going to go on. I don't know where it's going to end up, because oh man, I've read a few things written by historians, and a lot of intelligent people say it isn't your imagination. What you are seeing now is frighteningly similar to the rise of Nazism prior to World War II. It is frighteningly similar. There are a whole raft of similarities, and it's very disturbing to think where it might go. Milk my man. Oh, you love the cow video. It was fun. I was actually stuck. I wanted to make a video yesterday, pre-recorded one, and I didn't know what to make it on. And what I prefer to do is something that's already on people's minds, so it doesn't require much explanation. Although I'm not shy of explaining things, but if I'm doing a topical video, I prefer it to be stuff people are already talking about, so I don't need to explain. And I was kind of lost, and then I just thought, wait. The cow, the big cow. Everyone's talking about the big cow. And it was just such a fun, silly thing. I have to do silly things occasionally just to stay sane, really. As I wrestle with deep thought, would Trump be Mussolini to Putin's Stalin? See, that's interesting. Because, okay, Putin's an obvious totalitarian. Like, he subverted the Russian constitution to have a stranglehold on power. There was stuff put into the constitution that was supposed to stop someone like Putin, and he just kind of laughed at it and got around it. So he's obviously a totalitarian. And Stalin was obviously a terrifying totalitarian, just really into executing anyone who he perceived as a threat. And yeah, I guess you could argue Putin's inherited the legacy of Stalin, because I mean, he was in the KGB before the USSR broke up, so he's very old school in that. Oh yeah, I have seen that misfoxification. Xi, in the head of China's Communist Party, is a fan of Mao Zedong. I mean, he seems to be real old school, throwback, totalitarian communist. Like, he seems to be really consolidating his power. Like, yeah, you don't get to vote me out. I'm just establishing a power structure that means I'm boss. He seems to be very much in favor of the old school Chinese Communist Party way of running things. Trump's just a clown. I mean, I don't know Mussolini's history so much to know how effective Mussolini is and how much of a clown he was. It's a good parallel, because compared to Hitler and Stalin, Mussolini, while a fascist, did seem a bit of a clown. But my history's not that good, so I'm not sure. Oh yes, Safa, the Death of Stalin movie is fucking great. If you've never seen it, it's really worth seeing. Like, it's bizarre that you could turn something as horrible as Stalin's reign of terror into a comedy. But it's both funny and terrifying, because just seeing sort of control and people being killed left, right, and center, and at the same time, it's like political farce, and it is quite funny. Definitely recommend you see. I think it's written by the same person who did the British series In the Thick of It and the American series Veep. It's very good. Definitely go see it. Wrestle with deep thought. You think the DNC is to put aside the egos that Bernie Beto running against? I think Bernie's too old. I think Bernie should fuck off. I think Clinton should fuck off. Their time has passed, and it's a really backward step if they try and run. Yeah, just let someone else, anyone else. No, I think Sanders, Clinton should both fuck off. Their time's gone. Yeah, I'm much more the sort of progressive populist type, Beto or Ocasio-Cortez, and there's a few others. I mean, politics is politics, and they've all got something shit about them. But yeah. Mitchell, that's a big question. What's safer, right wing or left wing? Think less in terms of right wing or left wing and how authoritarian they are. Because people under the name of communism or socialism can be the worst totalitarians the world's seen, like Mao or Stalin. But your common or garden variety, in my incredibly biased opinion, if, alt-right, neo-Nazis and fascists, if they get their way, people are killed, minorities are persecuted, and it's just shit. Whereas, my sort of left gets in control, you get things like the 40-hour week and paid holidays. And, more state control of the economy and industry, which has its flaws as well. But it cracks me up when people act as if capitalism doesn't have flaws. The amount of people who die of starvation, and you can just point to the endless cavalcade of failures of capitalism, people living in poverty. And I'm talking about in developed countries. And, you get these conservatives go, oh, Venezuela. And it's like, yeah, cool, dude. It's a complex situation, and you're deliberately ignoring all nuance and going, Venezuela's what happens with socialism. And like, well, Detroit's what happens with capitalism, for fuck's sake. People having poisoned water and the entire city collapsing. Oh, yes, Mofo Sonia, right. China, they have re-education camps. It seems like the people they're focusing on are the Uyghur minority, Muslims. I think they're from the north. And of course, the country of China is fucking huge, of course. And I think the Uyghurs were isolated from like the whole communist side of thing for a while. But these days, yeah, they do apparently have re-education camps to try and make them give up Islam. And yes, the social credit thing, that Black Mirror thing they're doing now, that they're going to rate all your behavior and you'll have a public social credit score. Yeah, that's very fucked up. And hello, Fila and Sela. And you're right, Safi, you're right about the poisoned water. That's just come up in the last couple of weeks. Some areas, people got told not to drink the tap water because there's something wrong with it. But I like to think that will get fixed relatively soon. There are whole chunks, millions of people in the US, millions, who haven't had safe drinking water for, I don't know how long, like 5 or 6 years or something. If you look under the covers, the US is this close to being a failed state. I mean, for real. However, so yes, you're right. If you get caught by cameras jaywalking in some places in China, they put you all over social media. But they've already made one mistake. Apparently, the cameras picked up a photo that was on the side of a bus, and because it was a picture of a person, and it looked like the camera thought it was a person jaywalking, and he was the head of something or other, and they stuck his picture all over social media saying he was jaywalking, and he wasn't. It was a picture on the side of a bus. So misfoxification in China, they're going easier on the Han Chinese, but yes, cracking down hard on the Uyghurs. And that's been going on for quite a few years, but now it seems to be getting hardcore with the re-education camps. Very old school communist China shit going on. Yes, Belinda, I did see the Adani group are saying their mine's going ahead and they're actually doing all the funding, but they're not, because they're getting millions of dollars in subsidies from taxpayers, and they're ripping, if they get their way, they will rip billions of dollars of value out of Australia that we'll never see any benefit of. And yes, it's just that we all know more coal mining with the disaster we're already facing is fucking terrible. It's just everything about the Adani mine is shit. And that's the one thing, although, you know, it's currently the federal Conservative government who are saying, yeah, let's go. Labor can't hold their head up. Labor don't have the guts to stand against it. The state Labor government in Queensland supports it, and federal Labor don't have the guts to go against it. I saw that line, Spider. The fucking Nationals senator, who's, you know, Minister for Mining or something, actually did, and I went off about this on social media. He did this stupid fucking tweet saying, "Oh, I've been on the bushfires, which is bad, but good news. The little Aussie battler Adani's going to open the mine." And it's like, okay, you get fucked on several fronts. For a start, you even mentioned the bushfires, and anyone rational knows we are getting worse weather, more severe weather events. We're going to face catastrophic bushfires basically every year because of climate change. And in your next breath, after going, oh, the bushfires are bad, you're going, oh, but we've got to mine more coal as well. And what I really wanted to put his head down an open mine shaft or something, calling Adani an Aussie battler, is a company run by Indian billionaires. So even on purely monetary grounds, on financial grounds, these already billionaires are going to rip billions of dollars of value out of Australia that we'll never see any of. It's a fucking farce. Yes, Luke, we have a very hot summer coming. I think by February, basically everywhere in Australia will have suffered catastrophic bushfires. They already had serious ones in New South Wales a couple months ago, serious ones in Queensland now. I reckon by the end of summer, there won't be anywhere untouched by the bushfires. The same sort of really severe fires they had in Europe and America in their summer just passed. We're going to get fucking hammered. By February, it's going to be a nightmare. Stella, you managed to finish the dishes, even with the spider. Oh, you got some Tasmanian moonshine. Nice. What's it called? Mellifera by the Tasmanian Moonshine Company. There are a lot of Australian spirit makers at the moment. A lot of Australian gins. I've seen a few people marketing stuff under the name Moonshine, and there's some Australian whiskies. I think they're modelled on Scotch whiskies more than like bourbon or rye whiskey, because they're calling them single malts and whatnot. So there are a lot of Australian spirit makers at the moment. Safa, do I think the Queensland fire is worse than the latest California fires? Not yet, but they have the potential to be. And of course, the California fires, they had a much bigger population than Queensland, so more people were affected. But I think on a comparative style, because we're in the middle of the Queensland fires. We're not at the end of them. They've just started. They could, while they're very bad now, they could get much, much worse. We're not through the worst of it yet. So the Queensland fires could become worse than the California ones. We don't know. And yeah, it's only a start. Like, we've already had really bad fires in New South Wales, now really bad fires in Queensland. Everyone's going to get hit before the end of summer. It's going to be shit. Yeah, Luke, like the Ash Wednesday fires, it's just bad. I noticed by yesterday, the worst affected areas in Queensland were getting the catastrophic warnings. It's kind of fun, like telling people in other parts of the world, like, show them the bushfire warning charts, and the second lowest rating of the bushfire warning is high. It's basically because we're perpetually at risk. But yeah, after the really bad fires, what are they, about 10 years ago, 8 years ago to 10 years ago, the really bad ones here in Victoria that wiped out whole towns. That's when they introduced the catastrophic ranking. And they've had to use it every summer since. The catastrophic ranking, for those who don't know it, means the fire is now so bad that if you haven't already left the affected area, it's too late. There's nothing you can do. It's the difference between extreme, means the risk is extreme. You should probably get out of the high risk areas. If it tilts up to catastrophic, it's too late. They actually say trying to escape is too dangerous. And ever since they adjusted the rankings to have catastrophic at the top of the chart, it's happened every summer since somewhere. But yeah. Was that Stella, similar climate and geology as, oh yes, in Tassie, because you got all the whiskey distilleries down in Tassie. Yes, because you're right, it is a similar climate and geology to Scotland, the closest that we get in Australia anyway. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of Australian spirits around. A lot of people on the mainland doing gin. Yeah, and there's the whiskies, and yeah, a few marketed under the name moonshine. I've seen Australian absinthe as well. I haven't tried it, but I've seen Australian absinthe. Mitchell, is it time to go to Mars? We're going to turn this place into Mars if we're not careful. Stella, the fireboards mark the lowest is high. I don't know, actually. That's not something I've heard. I probably haven't been out of Melbourne to see a fire warning board recently. Yeah, well, that's the thing, Miss Fox. You're showing the category for storm and fire warnings that's like run. That's extreme. If it gets too extreme, that's run. It's get the fuck out. If this area is ranked extreme, get the fuck out. But there's one beyond extreme, catastrophic. And if it hits that, you're too late. You should have left yesterday. And it's like the really bad fires we had here. The stories, like, the fire was moving at 100 kilometers an hour. There were stories of people like in the rural area, and they like looked out their back door and they saw the fire front come over the hill about 1 kilometer away, and they ran through the house going, "Fire's coming, okay, let's go." And in the time it took them to go from the back door to grab everyone and get out the front door and get to their car, the fire had reached their house. And that's what we mean by catastrophic. It's too late. At that point, the fire is moving so fast, the conditions are so volatile, there is nothing you can do to be safe. It's basically, yeah, put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye, because it's just, nobody can predict what's going to happen. And you can't just say, oh, do X and you'll be safe, because it's too volatile for that. But hey, isn't this a fun topic? And this topic of conversations, it's going to keep coming up all summer, because the risk is just so high. Again, I think there's like concentrated lime juice at the bottom of this. I'm going to top it up because the lime juice is too much for me. It's too tart. Okay, get some ice. Right. Put some lemonade in. Where's my lemonade? Ah! Okay, a bit of lemonade to lighten it up a bit. A little bit more of the Captain Morgan in. So, yes, drinking with Angry. I'm going to make some more flavors for the weekend, I think. I mean, not this because it's already flavored, but some of the other stuff. Where's my flavoring stuff? It's here. Look. I get it from this specialist rock candy maker called the Red Balloon in Pran. And you see these red ones. Where are we? Red ones. That is sweet, sour, salty chili. And like the ingredients, of course, are sugar and the food acids. And it's got salt and chili seed oil in it. So there's actual real chili in this. This one's a bit tamer. That's a salted caramel. Only used on a few things. And this very natural looking color one, that's orange mandarin fizz. Yes. So do I get a discount for all the booze I buy? I don't buy that much. But isn't there like the big chain bottle shop here, Dan Murphy's, the big discount chain. They have a loyalty card. And I bought booze from them. They go, do you want a Dan Murphy's card? I go, no, I don't. Don't want my wallet falling open and seeing I've got like frequent flyer miles with a fucking bottle shop, even though, you know, yeah, maybe I'm just in denial. But I thought, no, that's not something I want in my wallet, quite honestly. Oh, yeah, Belinda, I vaguely remember the 2003 firestorm in Canberra and it being handled badly, and it got quite close to a lot of suburbs. Tendai, how high at risk is Australia from desertification? Well, about 90% of the land mass is already desert, so that ought to give you a hint. Yeah, there was, along with the other extreme weather, there was a big dust storm in Sydney this week, I think. Yeah. Oh, that's a cheery thought, Miss Foxification. You're saying Perth drained the aquifer, so they may suffer desertification at an increased rate. Well, and because they're right on the edge of the desert, of all the capital cities, Perth is most surrounded by desert. Charlie, you know, the Dan Murphy's card gets you specials. You love it. Yes. I'm probably being overly precious. Just the idea of some, you know, I don't know, someone's seeing in my wallet that I've got a Dan Murphy's membership. It's like, yeah, you buy enough booze for that to be worthwhile, do you? And me acting all guilty when the answer is clearly yes. But yeah. Mitchell, that's a big question. Do fire shelters work? I think that's a yes and no question. It depends how well the fire shelter is built and what sort of fire you're caught in. See, one thing is a lot of these fires move very quickly. And let's just say if your fire shelter was built in a spot where there wasn't much or any fuel around it, the fire might pass over quite quickly, and even a simple fire shelter might help. And but in other sorts of fires, a lot of homemade fire shelters, you just be trapped in them and you get cooked in them. So yeah, I don't think it's a black and white answer. Do fire shelters work? It's going to depend on the type of fire shelter you're talking about and what sort of fire you put. Feeler and sealer, that's a big question. Cape Town running out of water. I have not heard anything about that for ages. Now I want to look it up. Cape Town out of water. I want to see what the latest on that is. Okay. There's the headline you want to see. How Cape Town was saved from running out of water. All right, yes. So they took a lot of risks. They announced the day zero. So people stockpiled water and stopped using things. Tourism stopped. So after years of trying to convince residents to conserve, the aggressive campaign jolted people into action. Water use is limited to 50 litres per person today, whereas in 2016, average daily per capita use in California is 321 litres. So that's quite severe limitation of water. And households that exceeded the limit faced fines and having water shut off. So they showered in buckets. Cape Town's water use dropped from 600 million litres a day in mid-2017 to 507 million litres per day at the end of April. That doesn't sound like that big an improvement, does it? And that's short of the 450 million the city should be using. Okay. So they still haven't run out of stories. Farmers in drought affected areas have to abandon crops, yes. So it's obviously affected farming. Now they've pushed back 0 day to 29. So they're not out of the water, out of the woods. They're still projecting 0 day, like the day that water actually gets cut off to Cape Town, to sometime in 2019. And of course, this is a risk. Is saying some people, well, was what you're saying before a hoax? You know, are you talking shit? And of course, people see conspiracies everywhere these days. So they're still at very high risk. They avoided the critical moment, but they're still at very high risk. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm so glad you reminded me of that, because that was a big deal, and then I hadn't heard anything about it for a while. So if you're saying, why would people rebuild in fire-prone areas? It's where they live. What are they going to do? Like, fire-prone, that's everywhere. That's every country town in Australia is fire-prone. We're now this is literally the reality. The literal reality the entire country faces now is basically every country town is at critical risk of hugely damaging bushfires. There's nowhere for people to move. That's the main problem. Oh, sorry, I just always said there, Stella, that we're back to the fire shelter thing. Yes, a lot of fire shelters that people have built in the bush are just human-sized oven. It's absolutely true. They're very high-risk things. Oh yeah, that's another one, Luke. On train lines that get shut down on hot days. That happens, I think, in most of the capital cities on really hot days. The train lines actually start to buckle in the heat, and it becomes unsafe to run trains. I know it happens in Melbourne. I think it happens more in Sydney. Yeah, that's a thing. Yes, you hit the nail on the head, Miss Foxification. The drier we get, the worse it gets, and we're just getting drier. And of course, possibly the worst thing that happens is when you get spring rains and it promotes growth, and then no more rain all through summer, and all that spring growth dries out and just makes all this fucking fuel. Pat, why do people talking about African gangs? Because conservative politicians and media outlets are using that lie as a vote getter. They've decided they should ramp up racism, and I think it will get them votes. Backfired spectacularly against the Liberal Party in the Victorian elections this past weekend. Because here's the thing, crime happens. And there are a number of incidents that involved African youth. It's just what happens is they get reported way out of proportion to how often they're happening and what impact they're having. It's just like, and they're honestly, there's simple shit like if a bunch of African teenagers gather in a park, people freak out. And this is because of the hype the media's been doing. People freak out and call the cops, and it becomes a flashpoint. And what was, teenagers having a party gets reported as a riot. Like particularly the fucking Murdoch media whipped themselves up into a frenzy. There's been a couple recently where they've gone, oh, riot, chaos, people were terrified. Because yeah, some people might have been scared by a big group of black kids, because they're A, racist and stuff, and B, the hysteria the media and politicians have whipped up. But there was literally one where it was just kids in the park eating fried chicken. And when they did get cleared off by the cops and they went, but when they went to the nearest train station, a whole bunch of them got on the train at once, and they were stopping the train from leaving. They were standing in the doorways, holding the doors open for their friends to get on. And this was breathlessly reported by the Murdoch tabloids in an attempt to whip up the racist hysteria. But, people were terrified. Right, so there were too many black kids for their comfort. Okay. And because afterwards the police go, there was no crimes. No one was arrested. No one was charged because no crimes were committed. There were no reports of injury. There were no reports of property damage. Like nothing happened. Yes, very much. African gangs are our version of the caravan of rapists and gangsters. Yes. And for every incident that does happen, like, the people want to focus on home invasions went up. Oh, look, there was this thing where, and there were incidents where a group of, Sudanese youth got in a fight in the streets. And there were one or two spectacularly bad bits of behavior that the people involved with should and actually were prosecuted to full extent. The most notable one was when it was a year or two ago when the Moomba Festival was on, and they were getting involved in fights in the street. And Moomba's so straight and square that a bunch of rowdy teenagers having running battles in the street and smashing stuff and throwing stuff over would freak people right the fuck out. They were assholes, and they do need to be shut down. It's like these idiot racist fuckwits who go, oh, you're just mollycoddling them and whatnot. I was like, no, I am of the belief that anyone who commits a crime should be prosecuted. And guess what? They are. And in fact, the concept that the Victorian police are at all shy in going after African youth is horseshit. Cops are as racist as any other cops. It's just there's actual incidents that have happened blown out of all proportion. For every fight involving African youths that's been breathlessly reported as chaos, there are dozens of street fights involving groups of white guys. That's a simple statement of fact, and they go, oh, crime. Well, the Sudanese youth are responsible for 1% of the crime. You go, oh, but they're only 0.1% of the population, so they're overrepresented. Yes, that is a statistical fact that they're overrepresented in terms of population, but that's not what this ridiculous racist hyperbole was saying. It was saying, oh, out of control African crime gangs, Melbourne people scared to leave their homes. It's sick and disgusting. And Peter Dutton was right at the forefront of this racist bullshit. It's like when they say this stuff, oh, people in Melbourne are scared to go out at night. That's simply factually not true. And when he says it, he knows he's lying. He is deliberately lying to inflame racism because he's trying to pander to racists in the hope of getting votes. So it's not just that he's lying. He is deliberately lying to appeal to racists. And it's absolutely disgusting. And it blew up in their fucking face at the election. As particularly with people like Dutton saying, people in Melbourne are scared to go out at night. People in Melbourne go, no, I'm not. I'm honestly not. I'm really not. You know, almost all forms of crime have been going down here as just absolutely ridiculous. And yes, basically anyone pushing that narrative about the out of control African crime gangs is a fucking racist. Like, by definition, you're disproportionately emphasizing a minority of offenders based on race. That's by definition racist. It's like, Jesus. And it's weird. It's the same people who want to do something super extreme, like the former Victorian Liberal leader who got dumped for failing so badly in the election, Matthew Guy, was coming out with all this extreme law and order bullshit. And when there was that awful incident in Melbourne where a guy who was like a huge Melbourne institution was fatally stabbed by that shithead who set his car on fire as well. And the perpetrator ended up getting shot dead by the cops. It's like all these people saying need to do something super extreme because that guy was a Muslim who said he was inspired by the Islamic State jihadis. And so we have to do something really extreme. Okay, that was terrible. And that was really upsetting to everyone in Melbourne. It was an awful event that shouldn't have happened. But people want to fixate this one murder by this one asshole. And just go, the same people who want to obsess and go, oh, I've got to stop the Muslims to do this. If you suggest, well, we need to do something about men because so far this year, 70 women have been murdered by their current or former partner. So if we have to do something really extreme about this one Muslim who murdered one person, we clearly have to go super duper extra extreme on this out of control lethal domestic violence epidemic, don't we? And they go, whoa, hashtag not all men. It's just like, fuck off and be consistent, okay? Actually focus on what is causing the most damage in society. And it's just like, it's like in the US, they've been so slow to wake up to the threat posed by extreme white supremacist terrorists. There's no other word for them but terrorists, because they've been killing people. They've been involved in mass killings. Like since good old 9/11, extreme right-wing white supremacist terrorists have killed so many more people than Muslim terrorists. And even beyond that, just the random getting killed by people with guns in the US is so out of control. And it's like people just bizarrely focus on things that are tiny, tiny risks, but they blow them out of proportion. And when the huge, obvious risk staring them in the face is drawn to their attention, they go, no, what? No. And yes, misclassification, incels, they're a terrorist group. They actively radicalize young men and they advocate for mass killings. And there's been a series of mass killings done by incels following that in ideology. And it's just fucked. Oh, shit. Life's funny. You're on a night train to Sydney for work, and you and your workmate saw a bloke being abusive to his girlfriend. So your mate picked him up and slammed him into the train door window. Everyone, yeah, that's fair. Yes, Misfoxification. The Proud Boys are running scared at the moment, since there was darkly rumored that they were being watched by the FBI as an extremist group. The ones who had been the public face and trying to make money out of it, people it was Milo Yiannopoulos, and not that he was the Proud Boy, but he disavowed them because of this. And it was very theatrical what him and, oh God, my brain's gone slightly blank on the guy, Gavin McInnes, that's him, because he wants to come to Australia. And he shouldn't be allowed in Australia. I often when these various dickheads say they're going to come to Australia and rip money off people on their speaking tours, I don't really get on the bandwagon of they should. I rarely get on the bandwagon of they should be banned from entering the country, because Australia does have what's basically called the character test for whether or not you'll be given a visa to come into Australia. People who have failed the character test include Snoop Dogg, because of his various convictions and charges. But there's supposed to be this speaking tour by Gavin McInnes and Tommy Robinson. And I'm 100% in favour of no, don't give them a visa, don't let them in the country, because they're both extremist hate preachers. They both inspire people to violence. They both clearly fail the character test. And with, in Tommy Robinson's case, he's multiple criminal convictions. It's just like, no, fuck no. Yes, you're right, Miss Foxification. Milo ruined his credibility with a lot of people who've been championing him when he did all that pedophile apologist stuff. Because he's got this thing where it's like trying to be edgy. It's like super humorous, like when people got kicked off Sky News in Australia for being too racist. They forgot where the line was. Like, Milo Yiannopoulos' shtick was pathetic with this, I'm so edgy, I make people uncomfortable, I'm edgy. And he just went a bit far in basically saying pedophilia is okay, and he got surprised when that was too far. And it's like people on Sky News who get bumped for just being that bit too much racist. And he's going, but I didn't know what to do. You wanted me to be really racist, and I thought I was being the normal sort of racist. I didn't know where the line was. It's absolutely ridiculous. Mitchell, my thoughts on citizenship. It's a thing that exists. That's quite the abstract question. Oh, Luke, the questions on the citizenship test. Funny you should bring that, because as I mentioned before, Mrs. Angry is a psychologist. She had a thing recently. She had to run a training day at her work, and they had to do the icebreaker, the team bonding thing, and she's trying to work out what to do. She did this thing where they actually did the citizenship test for Australian citizenship to see how many people could pass it. And some of the questions were really weird. Yeah, but often when there's a citizenship test with questions, they're often phrased in a way to let those in authority arbitrarily exclude people without saying why they excluded them. They say, oh, they failed the test. Yeah. Charlie, why did Milo speak out against Kevin Spacey? Because Kevin Spacey was perceived to be on the left. That's the other thing, particularly in the US, but it's not limited to the US. But those right-wing troublemakers, they will do anything to try and damage the reputation of someone they perceive to be against them, particularly someone who's been vocally anti-Trump. Like the dude who directed the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The people who whipped up, oh, look at these terrible things he said on Twitter. They don't care. They're not offended by that. They just saw it as an opportunity to embarrass his employer, Disney, and make him lose his job. It's that hypocrisy and arguing in bad faith that I can't stand. I will never argue in bad faith. I won't make an argument that I don't believe in. And these pricks all the time, their end goal is just I've got to own the libs. And that's a by any means necessary thing. And so they make arguments that they don't believe. They argue they're upset by something they're not upset by to try and score points. And I fucking hate that. That's such bullshit. It's really such bullshit. And that's why I usually don't waste time with them. You should debate such a... No, I shouldn't, because they're a fucking wanker. They're a liar and a bigot, and they argue in bad faith, and I don't want to waste my time. It's as simple as that. So for the question, how many Aussies would Australian-born people would fail the citizenship test? If they didn't study, I think about 75% of the population would fail the test. If you knew the sorts of questions that were on it and you could study for it, then the pass rate would go up. But if you just ran like with no preparation on the Australian population, okay, take your citizenship test, I reckon 75% of the population would fail the test. Because the test is basically designed that way. It's got all these questions of shit you just wouldn't know the answer to. Adele, you'd fail because you don't know who the first few prime ministers are. I don't know prime ministers. Who was our first one? Was it Barton? No. I'm trying to remember because I didn't do history basically, which is something I regret, honestly. But it just sounded boring, which is, reflects how I felt about school. Everything seemed I was right. It was Barton. Oh my God. You're one of those things you don't know that you knew. Yeah, Luke, you can get those free practice tests online, and I reckon most people would fail. Lions by DS. When was Bob Hawke given the black eye by a cricket ball? That was hilarious. For those who don't know, Prime Minister in the 80s, Bob Hawke, was a real cricket tragic, and he organised these games with the Pollies playing against the journos, and he wasn't wearing a helmet, and he wore glasses, and he wasn't wearing a helmet, and I don't know, one of the journos pitched one a bit short, and Hawkeye tried to hook it, and he misjudged it, and it went bang right into the middle of his face. There's this spectacular bit of video of Hawkeye getting smacked right in the face with a cricket ball, and his glasses going flying. And yeah, he had black eyes for ages. It's lucky, like, if it was a proper fast bowler, Jesus, that would fucking kill you getting hit in the head like that. But yeah, it's pretty spectacular when the Australian Prime Minister is playing a game of cricket and gets sconed right in the fucking middle of the forehead with a cricket ball. Yeah. Safi, you loved the Russian and French revolutions in high school history. Yeah, I really regret not doing history. I avoided history and geography. And geography is basically politics. And I really regret not doing study on, like, I've done a lot of reading and stuff, but I've not done proper study on history and geography and politics and whatnot. And I really regret that in retrospect. Yeah, I'm going with you there, Stella. Schools should teach more Australian history, but practical stuff, the Constitution, how Parliament works. Hey, we should throw in how we almost had a fascist coup in the early 20th century. There are people who still use them. Who remembers the story of the opening of the Harbour Bridge, where a guy on a horse charged in with a sword, Captain de Groot, and most people regard that as a quirky thing. And he was in a group called the New Guard, who were fascists, and he was doing that to upstage the premier who was opening the Upper Bridge. Most people regard that as a quirky sort of thing. Oh, the premier went to open the Upper Bridge and a guy jumped up on a horse with a sword and cut the ribbon. Oh, he was actually a fascist. And but the new guard were kind of like the alt-right of their time. They were the young, feisty ones making things. The dangerous ones was the old guard. They were anti-communist. They were on the verge of launching a fucking fascist coup against the elected state government in Australia. That's something a lot of people don't know. We were that close to a fascist coup, but it didn't happen. Mr. No, drag us back to Jordan Peterson. You're absolutely right. He pushes the religion angle really hard, which I just find super humorous because, again, these feisty alt-right guys who are usually part of the new atheist movement, and they love Jordan Peterson because he tells them women should be controlled by men, and he fucking panders to incels of all things, and he's basically telling these little fucking Nazi wannabes that they're right and women should be subjugated and Western civilization is the greatest and no one else counts. But at the same time, he's pushing this weird fundamentalist Christianity. And these guys who will spout on and on about atheism being the only sensible thing, it's just like they're willfully deaf whenever Jordan Peterson starts talking about you have to be Christian to be a decent person. There's no such thing as an atheist with morals. And it's just like, they're so selective in their hearing. It's bizarre. Adele, I also agree with you. We should be taught much more about Aboriginal culture in Australian schools, definitely. So for how extremist are the current federal politics? Overall, not that much, but there's a radical, socially conservative fringe in the conservative parties in Australia that for some reason have had sway ideologically for the last 8 years. And they don't reflect the population. And I mean, the Libs came that close to losing the last federal election. They're going to get slaughtered in the next federal election. Look, I could be wrong. I could easily be wrong. And won't I look silly then? And then all the Conservatives get to gloat on me if they don't lose the next federal election. But really, they're going to get slaughtered. Like, it's interesting, the state Victorian election here where I live, the most likely outcome was always going to be that the sitting Andrews government was returned, but they just romped you. No one predicted the fucking catastrophe it was for the Conservatives. And it's basically because people rejected their bullshit. And it doesn't seem to have sunk in at the federal level. You need to get off your bullshit because people are recognizing your bullshit and they're calling you on it. And I mean, they've got 6 months to wake the fuck up. I don't think they're going to. Mitchell, is Commonwealth of Australia a corporation in the US? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. I'm going to say no. The Commonwealth of Australia is the legal entity that is Australia. I doubt it. There's a corporation in the US. Yes. Oh yeah, Belinda, I love it. Matthew Guy. He only was only today or maybe yesterday that he resigned. And I love the headlines when they're breaking. Matthew Guy's about to have a thing where he's going to resign. And I was like, yeah, breaking. Matthew Guy thinks he's got a choice. It's like, after the fucking disaster that he led the state Liberal Party to, he was just gone. Like, it was all his fault. It was the wrong campaign. He was the wrong person to be led. And I just love, it's like so many of the state Liberals are so fucking angry now. And they're everything they say privately in emails or in like Slack discussion groups or whatever, of course, gets leaked to the media straight away. And one of them was saying like, oh, Matthew Guy was unelectable because, you know, he had the whole lobster with a mobster thing and he should have got replaced when that story came out, blah, blah, blah. So, dude, you kind of needed to say that before the election, not after the election. Tendo, you got to go. See you later. I'll be going in about 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes. Yes. Safa, in the Wagga by-election, the Conservatives lost it for the first time, but to an independent seat. And that's the thing, I was talking about this on Tuesday. They're in such big trouble at the federal election. I mean, realistically, there is no doubt Labor's going to form government at the next election. I mean, yeah, okay. Nothing's for sure, and it won't definitely happen. But seriously, anyone who'd bet on anything apart from a Labor victory is, you know, they're a fairly cavalier gambler, quite honestly. But the second problem the Conservatives face in the next federal election, they're not just going to be under attack by Labor all over the country, but in really conservative areas, they're going to face the challenge from conservative independents. People just go say, okay, let's all agree those guys in Canberra are a bunch of clowns. They do nothing for us. I'm a real conservative. I'm a local. I'll represent you. Those wankers won't represent you. They don't do anything for you. So they're going to be under attack all over the country by Labor, from people saying, yeah, I used to vote Liberal, but they're just fucking dickheads and I'm not voting them anymore. But even in the really conservative areas, there they will be under attack from conservative independents. There are some areas where Labor just doesn't stand a chance, but the major parties are under threat from independents, conservative independents. Yeah. This Foxification, you also need to go and get a pizza. Enjoy your pizza. That's a pizza supper, a late supper. Yes, after Indy, that was one that was a die-hard Liberal seat that went to an independent. That they are going to face a lot of that in country areas. Seats that the Liberal Party and the National Party held in country areas are going to be under a lot of threat from independents. And they know it. They know they're in trouble, and they are fair shit themselves, I say. I mean, like Scott Morrison's keeping up this bluster publicly and talking to the media and talking to Parliament. He's keeping up this bluster, but behind closed doors, he must know he's fucked. Like they had a female MP resign the other day because she basically said, I'm fucking sick of this. This party's gone to shit. I can't in good conscience support them anymore. I'm going to sit on the crossbenches as an independent. And there's another guy who he's from New South Wales, and apparently he's going to lose pre-selection. He's fallen out of favour with the party. He's apparently very conservative, and he's almost definitely going to be replaced by another more moderate candidate. But he's sitting in Parliament now, and basically, apparently, he's being lobbied by people who think he should run as an independent at the next election. And they said, do it now, quit the party now, and build up your profile as an independent, and then run as an independent in the next election. Because I think he's from a quite conservative area, but it's just like the wheels are falling off for the government so fucking badly. They had a 1-seat majority. Then when they knifed Malcolm Turnbull, he resigned, and there was a by-election for his seat, which an independent won. So then the government no longer had a majority. They had half the seats in the lower house, but they didn't have a majority. And now just the other day, with one of their MPs resigning, so they are a full-on minority party now. And if another MP resigns, they're really, really a minority. And that guy is like really pissed off at them as well. And then there are rumors that there are a whole bunch of malcontents within the Liberal Party who are looking for ways to get revenge on the people they don't like. So, I mean, Jesus, fucking falling apart. Set line spider, frustrations trying to get anyone from Labour, Green to discuss youth mental health service, west of Parramatta. Yeah, you're right. And that is a big problem. It seems worse in New South Wales than in Victoria, but there's generally a focus on the cities anyway. But yeah, west of Parramatta, and yes, after you're saying outside of Sydney, they act as if New South Wales doesn't exist. It does seem worse in New South Wales. I think it's an issue in Victoria. I think it's an issue in all the states. They focus on the capital city, and because I grew up in the country, and it feels so fucking isolated, quite honestly. I grew up without the internet, without like a national youth radio network like Triple J, fucking stuck with a country AM station that thought half of the top 40 was too edgy to play. So shit, in other words. It's much better now. But yeah, their policies definitely seem 90% focused on the cities. It's very easy for country people or even outer suburban people to feel really alienated. But yeah, I mean, you just got to lobby them. It's Mitchell, you want to know the root of the word Aboriginal. It literally just means first, my understanding. Often I know the root of words. The literal meaning of Aboriginal just means first. I'm just seeing if I can get a definition. Okay, so I'm doing a search of what the word means. Okay, the root is Latin. Okay, the most basic meaning is original inhabitant. Yeah, and it's I suspect the important part of the word is you see it's the same root as the word original. So the original use of the root in Latin was referring to the first ancestors of the Romans. It possibly could actually come from the Latin phrase ab origine, which literally means from the beginning. So yeah, the ab means from, and you can see the root of the word origine means original, from the beginning. So yeah, an interesting question you asked there. The root of the word basically means who was here from the beginning. Safa, Aborigine is not a keyword. It's interesting. Because of course the word Aboriginal means indigenous, and that's I wish I could find the video. There was some videos done as an education thing with Aboriginal Australians answering dodgy questions, and then one of the questions was, do you prefer Aboriginal or Indigenous? And basically, here's a surprise: different people have different opinions. And like some of them were saying, like some people preferred the word Indigenous, and others were saying, oh, when you say Indigenous, I just think plants, like it's the plant that's indigenous to the area, or an animal that's indigenous to an area. So some people prefer the word Aboriginal for the First Peoples. Some prefer Indigenous. And I just said that's another trendy word to talk about First Peoples or First Nations. Oh yeah, Charlie, where I grew up was blackfella, white fella. In fact, one of my favorite songs from the Warumpi band was called Blackfella, White Fella. It's a good song. Rugby Band. If you want some interesting music from the 80s in Australia, there was one white guy in the band. The rest were Aboriginal people. A lot of them were from the Northern Territory, I think. But yeah, I remember saying to someone as a co-worker, she was a Kiwi, and I said something about black fellas I grew up with, and she thought, Jesus, is that not a really bad word? I went, oh, no, where I grew up, that's literally a self-referential thing. The Indigenous Aboriginal people would call themselves black fellas, and I was a white fella. The lyrics to the Warumpi Band song are really good. It's like, I think a black fella, white fella, yellow fella, any fella. It doesn't matter what your color, as long as you're a true fella. Yeah, Stella, particularly in the country, most Aboriginal people refer to themselves as black fellas. But yeah, we were talking about political correctness earlier. Could super upset someone who was and this would be a white person who was super sensitive about what you said. If you just reference black fellas, they might get super upset at you. And honestly, if you were a bit cavalier with someone Aboriginal who didn't know you, they might get a bit iffy about you saying the black fella thing. But it's down to who you know. Oh, what the fuck does that stupid fuck Timothy Ward? Stop pretending you know anything about us. Northern Territory government board consecutive violence job. Ugh. Where do these random fuckwits come from? Quite honestly, we're all just having a really good chat, almost completely troll-free, and in the last 5 minutes, random fuckwit pops their ugly fucking head up. Oh, well, that is life, I suppose. That is particularly life on the internet. Oh, yeah. Well, that one was pretty offensive, Belinda. One of the Indigenous plants in Australia, which had been colloquially known as black boys. Yes, I remember that growing up. It's a desert. Is it a tree or a shrub? How would you classify that? And I'm not even sure what the name for them is now. But yeah, yes, yeah. I'm not surprised that got changed. We used to say a lot of really offensive things in quite a cavalier fashion. I remember there was an interesting thing as years ago. People, is it just called a grass tree, Stella? Yeah, it was sign language. I think it was Auslan. I think it's probably a few international sign languages as well. But they had some of the signs for various things were incredibly offensive. Like the sign for gay was this really outdated, and the sign for someone being Jewish was this thing that was meant to be a hook nose. And it was like people realizing, like, fuck, some of our signing's just awful. It's absolutely awful. And so a few of the signs were changed. So Mitchell, which word's right? Look, it's not so much the word that's right. It's probably more your intent and your behavior. Like I said, I think the words Aboriginal and Indigenous are fairly interchangeable. And for an actual Aboriginal or Indigenous person to get upset by them is really rare. It's more likely going to be an oversensitive white person who thinks it's the wrong thing to say. Like I said, where I grew up, we'd refer to black fellas and white fellas, but out of context, particularly if you don't know the people, it's a lot easier for that to come across as offensive. So it's probably more how familiar you are with someone and what the context is. And if you say something inadvertently where someone says, someone inadvertently says, you say something and they say, oh, seriously, I'm not cool with that. That was, just talk to someone and go, okay, help me out. Like, what did I say that was wrong? What would you prefer? You're not a troll. Text me heaps on here about animal justice. Not a racist, progressive, green, ignorant. No, you're a cunt, okay? you're a cunt. You just out of the blue come out saying stupid, brain dead shit, and I certainly won't be wasting any more time on you. Frank, you just made it. Last couple minutes, buddy. Yeah, Safi, your teacher was an old white lady. Yeah, she's probably a bit hypersensitive. And look, it's okay to be hypersensitive, but you've also got to listen to people and understand context. And that's the thing. I'm trying to. There are some broad groupings. Where I grew up in New South Wales, you could refer to people as Koori because that covered a big area. In Victoria, a large area you could refer to as Murray. But that can be a bit sort of gratuitous and tokenistic as well. Big thing is, if you're talking to someone, ask them, like, you know, you say, like, are you more comfortable if, you know, the word Aboriginal or Indigenous or neither? You know, like I said, some people like things like First Nations or First People. Some people might say, you know, no, call me Ray. It's, if you're willing to be open and listen to people, I think that's worth a lot more than obsessing over particular words. But you do need to be genuinely open. It's not about your intention. It's about how it comes across to other people. You need to actually listen and genuinely listen, not like, well, you're not allowed to be upset because I didn't mean to upset you. If the person says, like, no, because of all my experience and everything I've been through, I'm not cool with that terminology and I'm going to be really pissed off if you use it. You need to actually listen. You can't just go, oh, well, I got told that was okay. You need to actually listen to people, and you need to interact in good faith. And look, nothing's perfect. No one's perfect. No situation is perfect. You can always find yourself being dropped in a hole where you had no intention of it, and the situation gets out of hand. You're just gonna fucking roll with it if that happens. Yeah, it's very, like you say, a lot of First Nations people in America prefer to be called Native, and that's not universal. Like, some people are still okay with being called American Indians. Some prefer Native American. Some do in the US prefer Indigenous. Yeah, it's just be open. Be open and be willing to listen and be willing to learn. That's a good way to put it, Musical Aviator. Listen, actually listen instead of just waiting till it's your turn to talk. And be prepared to change, I guess. It doesn't matter if your intention was good. If you can't genuinely listen to someone and understand that there is a reason that you should change what you are doing or saying, then it doesn't matter what you do or say. Because, you know, you've got to be prepared to learn. You've got to be prepared to listen. And no people, no nation, no race, no group, no culture is monolithic. White people aren't monolithic. White people are immensely diverse. And I'm not even just cheating and saying the French are different to the Danish, are different to the English, are different to the Americans, are different to the Australians. I mean, white people within Australia are really different. White people within England are different. White people within European countries, white people within America are really different. No group, no culture, no ethnic group is a monolith, and it's ridiculous to suggest they are. So, yeah, I guess my big thing is always be open, always listen, always be willing to have a genuine conversation instead of just trying to force an outcome that you want. Yes, Frank, that's right. Some idiot racist like Pauline Hanson in Australia have deliberately misconstrued the meaning of the word Indigenous. Oh, it's born in Australia. So it's just, we looked that up. We looked up Aboriginal. So thank you for the question, Mitchell. When we looked up the root of the word Aboriginal, it meant the first people here, not people who were born here. You're not Indigenous, you're not Aboriginal if you were born in a particular place. It's the original inhabitants of the place that are Indigenous or Aboriginal to that area. Yeah, Dr. Papa Wong, that's completely legit. Pretending to listen while thinking about bacon and boobies. You know, that's completely legit. But hey, look, I've run a bit over time, but that's okay because we're having a good conversation. As always, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with everyone tonight. So I thank you one and all for joining me. You know, even if it was only for 5 minutes, like Frank. So thank you one and all for joining. It has as oh, what a boring bastard. I'll just get one more gone so I don't have to put up with them anymore. So look after yourselves one and all. Hope to see you again soon. Not sure I will get my TFU Friday video live because I'm catching up with some YouTubers after work tomorrow. So end of week video might be delayed till the weekend, but I might get it done tomorrow. You never know. Oh, good, Stella. You got your dishes and laundry done. Nice. Yes, it's nice to actually catch those trolls 5 minutes after finish time, Musically Evada. But they're gone now forever, so that's nice. So yes, look after yourself one and all. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Until such time as we do see each other again, take care of yourself, and I will say bye for now.